Hi guys. Today we're talking about libertarian socialism and forms of production. So, in our current society, I have a pen and paper that I'm basically practicing my thoughts on. Our current society is very hierarchical by design, kind of the pyramid. You have the lower trash, the plebs, the proles, if you will. You have the middle class, the petit bourgeois, who can kind of afford to survive but aren't rich. And then you have the bourgeoisie, who are the top of the top, the pinnacle. Now, there are subclasses within that. There's lumpen proles, which are like kind of in between petit bourgeois and regular proletarian class, but that's we're not going to get into Marxism. We're specifically talking about libertarian socialism, which has Marxist thought in it. But shut the fuck up, Tanner. So how do we get from this inherently hierarchical society, which our current society is, there's no debate, none, even capitalists will argue that our society is meant to be hierarchical. So how do we get from that hierarchical society to a society which is more level, more egalitarian, where there's representation throughout? How do we get to that society? So, this is where a lot of discussion takes place in leftist thought. Will there be a revolution? Will there be reform? Truth be told, I can't answer those. But one way or another, change needs to occur, right? Like, there has to be some change. We can agree on that, correct? There has to be change. So, what changes will allow for better democracy in a situation where there's reform? In a situation of reform in America specifically, because we live in America, I do at least, I assume you do as well. In America, there's this bill called the PRO Act, which allows for more democracy to pass and has passed the House. The PRO Act would allow for unions to not like instantly pass, obviously, because that's not democratic, but it would allow for unions to have safeguards so companies couldn't union bust them so effectively like they do. Could do the PRO Act. That could help. There's also more egalitarian modes in the form of other policies such as Medicare for All. Medicare for All is an inherently, in our society, it's a left-wing policy, but in other societies, like such other countries, it is completely normal. But in America, this policy would allow it so that everybody, regardless of whatever characteristics or creed you have, you would have access to healthcare. And in order to get to this more egalitarian mode of production, which is what we want, ideally, remember, you would have to have some form of statewide national healthcare. Some states already have this. Pennsylvania, for example, has the CHIP Act, I think it's called, which is basically any children under 21 have free healthcare, no matter what. Free dental, free healthcare, free med, whatever, covered, no matter what, to a certain extent. And that's a form of Medicare for all. My question is, why don't we have this for adults? Why don't we have this for adults? It's a question we never really think about too much. We just accept the way things are is for privatized healthcare, which I don't know about you, but in Pennsylvania, we have UPMC, Red Cross, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, BS, and that's about it. It's kind of monopolized, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other states where the healthcare. That's not very egalitarian. That's not very. It's not a very democratically a democratic way to choose healthcare. You don't have many options. You have two, and most of the time you get none. So that's another thing we could do. Additionally, we could have a form of universal basic income, or UBI. UBI is exactly what it sounds like. Every citizen gets paid a certain amount of money per month. Now you might be thinking, well, Tanner, why would you want to pay people? Well, it stimulates the economy. It stimulates the economy, and actually, you might be thinking that it makes people lazier. There's a study, I think, in a town in California that's going on currently that shows that UBI actually incentivizes people to work. Turns out, when you give people money, they don't have to worry about surviving. They can survive, and then they're able to work more. They're able to find a job because they don't have to worry about surviving. That's pretty poggers, right? That's pretty cool. Pretty based. So that's one thing that could be done. And this is just on the reform side. We'll do another video for revolution. It's such a cringe topic, honestly. I don't like the idea of a violent revolution. Mostly because I'm a pacifist. I like the idea of reform. I consider myself a moderately mannered libertarian socialist. I'm not as radical as like anarcho-syndicalists claim to be. I don't think America is ready for that revolution. We can barely pass reforms. If we can barely pass reforms, how can we do a violent revolution? I don't think we're ready. We don't have the material conditions. Anywho, back to reform. Another thing we could do is... What's the one thing? There's the PRO Act, there's the CHIP, there's the Universal Basic Healthcare, there's UBI, there's paid leave. Paid leave. As dumb as it sounds, you get sick, right? I'm just talking policy right now. Policy that makes that makes our reality more better, less hierarchical. Get going. I don't know how to say the word. I'm not an English major. I'm a poli-sci major. But paid leave. It's as dumb as it sounds. America's I think, the only country that does not have paid leave. It's weird. Why is that? Why don't we have paid leave? We can get into conspiracy theories all day, and I'm game for that. I love conspiracy theories, but in reality, it's businesses don't care about people. They just don't. So no paid leave for you. We don't have representation in the workplace, which, if the PRO Act was passed, we would surely start seeing more unions pop up. Because the reason we don't have as many unions as we used to is due to union busting. Thanks to Ronald Reagan and every single president after. And actually started with Jimmy Carter. This whole process started with Jimmy Carter back in the late 70s. The process of destroying our unions, because those unions are commies, brother. You don't understand. When people collectivize, that means they'll talk about socialism. When in reality, when people collectivize, they just want their material conditions improved, and they might collectively bargain to make their conditions better. We see it all the time. Works. But yeah. That's why you'll always hear me say Ronald Reagan was the devil, but in reality, Jimmy Carter was pretty damn close. Jimmy Carter was an aight president, don't get me wrong. Jimmy Carter was aight. I have a friend who loves Jimmy Carter, but Jimmy Carter had some issues. Jimmy Carter had a lot of issues. In fact, the union busting is one of the first. Some would argue that Jimmy Carter is the first neoliberal. The proto-neoliberal, if you will. Well, Reagan is the first, obviously. Well, him and Thatcher. But Carter started doing all the shit that Reagan did before. Set it up for Reagan, actually. And what else could be done for change? Just pull up my notes. Workplace democracy. I know that goes along with the PRO Act, but I want to explain workplace democracy a bit more. The whole point of having the egalitarian society is workplace democracy. If there's no workplace democracy, the society is still hierarchical, as designed. Workplace democracy is exactly what it sounds like. It's not scary, it's not evil, it's not satanic, it is socialist. You're right, it is. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, a lot of Americans benefit from socialism. A lot of Americans. If you have Social Security, if you have Medicare, if you have any form of government assistance, you're benefiting from socialism. I just want you to understand that. If you have any form of government assistance, you are benefiting from socialism. So that's not a bad thing. There's nuance to these discussions that just isn't had anymore, or has really never been had. Workplace democracy is the idea that since work is inherently authoritarian, and it is, your bosses are essentially dictators. We all know our work sucks. So what if, hear me out, there was a way for you to have your voice heard, one way or another. And when it was actually heard, your opinions could be implemented to make your workplace a better workplace. What if this workplace democracy took the form of unions or another way, through democratic means, through voting, through things like that? And Workplace democracy. The current approaches to workplace democracy is co-determination in representative congresses. And those are a step. Those are working. But ultimately, you want full democracy in the workplace, which would have to come one way or another through cooperatives, through unions, through voting, through debating. Any means, really. There's multiple ways to go through the democratic process. Many, many ways. And remember, folks, democracy is more than a decision-making process. Democracy is allowing you to represent yourself. And without democracy, we live in authoritarian landscapes. And personally, I don't know about you, but I don't like living in a totalitarian, authoritarian landscape. I don't like having those institutions in my life. If there's any way that we can get around the authoritarianism, then we should pursue it. Whether it is through reform or revolution. Simple as that. Change has to happen. Society has to progress. If society doesn't progress, the conditions get worse. That's all I have to talk about today. This is Tanner Shell from the Shlama Show, signing out as always. Peace, love, and solidarity forever.